The Galactic Council meeting hall buzzed with voices from dozens of different worlds. Ambassador Kyo Min from the blue-skinned Altarian people sat in her usual spot, listening to the endless arguments about trade routes and mining rights. She had been doing this job for 20 years, and most days felt exactly the same. But today felt different. Captain Bomsu from Earth was standing at the center podium, waving his hands as he spoke. The human was angry about something, as humans usually were. They always got worked up about the smallest things. Bomsu was talking fast, his face red with emotion. "You cannot just take the Kepler system from us," he shouted at the tall, gray, Velkrani delegates. "My people have been mining there for 15 years. We have families living on those stations." The Velkrani leader, a creature that looked like a walking tree made of metal, clicked his mechanical fingers. "Humans expand too fast. You take what is not yours. The galaxy was peaceful before you came." Bomsu opened his mouth to argue back, but then something strange happened. He stopped talking. Not just stopped talking, but stopped moving entirely. His mouth hung open, his hand frozen in mid-gesture. Kyomin frowned. She had seen humans pause before when they were thinking, but this was different. Bomsu's eyes had gone completely blank, like someone had turned off a light behind them. Around the Great Hall, other human delegates did the same thing. Ambassador Du Young from the Earth colony stopped writing notes. Commander Jin Woo from the human military sat down very slowly and stared straight ahead. Dr. Mi Young, who had been whispering to her assistant, went completely silent. The other alien species barely noticed at first. They were too busy celebrating. Finally, the loud humans had shut up. "Perhaps they have learned some manners," laughed one of the crystal-like Zephyrite delegates. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm, but Kyomin kept watching the humans. Something was very wrong. They all sat perfectly still, but their heads were tilted at exactly the same angle. All of them. Every single human in the room had tilted their head to the left as if they were listening to something no one else could hear. The Velkrani delegate who had been arguing with Bomsu waved a metal hand in front of the human's face. "Captain, are you functioning?" Bomsu did not respond. His breathing was steady, his eyes were open, but he seemed to be somewhere else entirely. Across the galaxy, the same thing was happening everywhere humans lived. On the mining station in the Kepler system, workers stopped in the middle of their shifts. Families eating dinner put down their forks at exactly the same moment. Children playing in parks stood perfectly still, their toys forgotten in their hands. Captain Nari was commanding a cargo ship between two star systems when it happened. 1 second she was talking to her crew about their next delivery. The next second everyone had gone quiet. Her engineer, Taeho, stopped working on the engine repairs. Her navigator, Hayrim, took her hands off the controls. The silence was complete. Not just quiet, but the kind of deep silence that made your ears ring. Nari tried calling other human ships on the communication system, but no one answered. Every human vessel in space had gone dark. Other alien species began to worry. The consortium of sciences sent messages to human colonies but got no replies. Trade ships that were supposed to meet human merchants found empty space where busy stations should have been. At first, many aliens thought it was some kind of plague. Diseases could spread fast in space, jumping from ship to ship, colony to colony. The Zephyrite sealed their borders, afraid the sickness might spread to them. The Velkrani military prepared for the worst, thinking the humans might be dying. But Dr. Hayrim, a scientist from the planet Centauri who studied different species, noticed something the others missed. She was reviewing security recordings from human ships and stations looking for clues about what had happened. What she found made her tentacles curl with fear. The humans had not collapsed or gotten sick. They had all stopped at exactly the same time, down to the smallest fraction of a second. Every human in the galaxy had tilted their head the same way, sat down the same way, closed their eyes for the same amount of time. That was impossible. Even if someone had sent a signal to all humans at once, it would take time to travel across space. Light itself took years to get from one star system to another. Nothing could make every human in the galaxy do the same thing at exactly the same moment, unless they were all connected somehow. Back in the council chambers, The aliens were starting to panic. Some thought it was an attack. Others believed the humans had finally destroyed themselves with their own technology. The Velkrani delegates talked about taking over human territories before other species could claim them. But Ambassador Du Young slowly opened her eyes. She looked around the room. With a strange expression, like she was seeing everything for the first time, her movements were smooth and careful, very different from the quick, jerky way humans usually moved. "The transition is complete," she said in a voice that sounded like music and thunder at the same time. The translating machines that helped different species understand each other started making weird noises. Sparks flew from some of them. Du Young's voice had too many layers, too many sounds happening at once. All around the room, the other humans opened their eyes too. They moved together, standing up at the same time, turning their heads in the same direction. But their eyes were different now. Deeper, like looking into a well that went down forever. "What has happened to you?" asked Kyomin, her voice shaking. Du Young smiled, and when she did, all the other humans smiled too. The same exact smile on dozens of different faces. "We have remembered who we are," they all said together, their voices creating a harmony that made the walls vibrate. The alien delegates began backing away from the humans. Some reached for emergency buttons. Others called for security. But the humans just stood there, smiling their identical smiles, watching everyone with their deep, dark eyes. "You do not need to fear us," Du Young said, speaking for all of them. "We are still your friends. We are still your partners in this galaxy. But now we are also something more." She paused, and every human in the room paused with her. "Now we are ready for what is coming." Outside the great windows of the council chambers, human ships that had been drifting silent in space suddenly came to life. Their engines hummed with new power. Their lights created patterns that had never been seen before. And in the deep darkness, between the stars, something ancient and hungry noticed that the galaxy had just become much more interesting. 3 days after the silence fell, Dr. Hayrim was still awake, staring at her computer screens. She had not slept since the humans changed. Coffee cups covered her desk, and her tentacles ached from typing for so long. She was the only scientist who seemed to understand that this was not a sickness or an accident. This was something planned, something that had been waiting to happen. Her laboratory was filled with recordings from human ships and stations, security cameras, communication logs, sensor readings, anything that might explain what the humans had become. What she found scared her more each day. The humans were moving again, but not like before. Every single human in the galaxy was working together like parts of one giant machine. When a human on Earth picked up a tool, humans on Mars were already preparing the materials that tool would be used on. When a human doctor on one station started treating a patient, human doctors on other stations began preparing for similar cases. They were sharing thoughts somehow, sharing knowledge instantly across impossible distances. Captain Nari was still commanding her cargo ship, but now she flew it like no human had ever flown before. Her movements were perfect, smooth as liquid. She could dodge asteroids without looking, navigate through storms without checking her instruments. Her engineer, Taeho, had begun making changes to the ship's engine. Changes that made no sense according to any textbook, but somehow made the ship faster and quieter than it had ever been. When Dr. Hayrim asked him to explain what he was doing, Taeho just smiled. "The ship needs to be ready," he said in that new musical voice all humans had now. "Everything needs to be ready." "Ready for what?" she asked. Taeho tilted his head, and for a moment his eyes seemed to look right through her, seeing something far away, for the darkness between the stars. Admiral Jin Woo was commanding the human fleet in ways that made no sense to military experts from other species. His ships moved in formations that looked more like dancing than fighting. They flowed around alien vessels like water, never threatening, never aggressive, but always in exactly the right place. The Velkrani tried to study these new patterns, thinking they might be some new type of warfare. But there was no pattern they could copy. The humans were not following rules or strategies. They were flowing like one organism with many parts. The scariest part was how helpful the humans had become. They were better at their jobs than they had ever been before. Human doctors could cure diseases they had never seen. Human engineers could fix machines they had never studied. Human farmers could grow food on worlds where nothing should have been able to live. So Jin, a human trader who sold goods between different star systems, continued her usual routes. But now she arrived at each destination before she should have been able to get there. Her cargo holds were filled with exactly the right goods for each planet, even goods she had never carried before. "How did you know we needed these medical supplies?" asked a Zephyrite station manager. His crystal body was flickering with confusion. "You were going to need them next week," Sojin said simply. "When the transport from the Altarian system gets delayed by solar storms. But the solar storms have not happened yet," he said. Sojin's smile was kind but strange. "They will." The galactic internet, which humans had built and shared with everyone, began to change overnight. Code that had taken years to write was rewritten in hours. Systems became faster, more efficient, more secure, but also more mysterious. Alien programmers could not understand how the new code worked, even though it worked better than anything they had ever seen. Dr. Mi Young, who studied different alien species, published research papers that revealed secrets about alien biology that should have taken decades to discover. She wrote about Velcrani reproduction cycles that the Velcrani had never told anyone about. She described Zephyrite emotional patterns that even young Zephyrite did not understand. "How do you know these things about us?" demanded a consortium scientist. "We have been watching and learning for a very long time," Mi Young replied. "We know you better than you know yourselves now." The most frightening discovery came when Dr. Rim managed to get onto a human research station. She expected to find it empty or filled with humans acting like robots. Instead, she found something much worse. The humans were still completely themselves. They told jokes, laughed at funny stories, complained about their work, missed their families. They were still the same individuals they had always been, but they were also something else. "We are still us," explained Commander Byung-ho, the station's leader. He was still the same friendly man who had helped Dr. Rim with her research for years. "But now we are also we." "I do not understand," she said. Byung-ho sat down across from her, just like he always had when they talked. But his eyes held depths that had not been there before. "Imagine you have been colorblind your whole life," he said. "You can see some colors, but not all of them. Then one day you wake up and can suddenly see every color that exists. You are still you, but now you are also more than you were before." "What colors can you see now?" she asked. "We can see the connections between all things. We can see how the galaxy fits together like pieces of a puzzle. We can see the patterns that show what will happen next." He stood up and walked to a window that looked out at the stars. "And we can see the shadow that is coming to destroy it all." Dr. Rim joined him at the window. Space looked the same as it always had. Black emptiness dotted with distant suns. "I do not see anything," she said. "Not yet," Byung-ho agreed. "But it is coming, from the space between galaxies. It has eaten 3 other galaxies already, and now it has noticed ours." He turned to look at her, and his expression was both sad and determined. "We changed because we had to. Because the galaxy needs guardians, and we are the only ones who can do the job." That night, Dr. Rim sent her report to the Consortium of Sciences. She told them that the humans had not been infected or attacked. They had awakened. They had become something that had been sleeping inside them all along. But she also sent a private message to her friend Kyo Min at the Galactic Council. "Something is coming," she wrote. "Something hungry and dark. The humans are preparing to fight it, and I think we should help them get ready." 2 weeks had passed since the Great Silence, and the galaxy was learning to live with the new humans. What surprised everyone most was how normal things still felt, even though nothing was truly normal anymore. Captain Bomsu still told terrible jokes during his cargo runs. Engineer Taeho still hummed old Earth songs while he worked. Dr. Mi Young still got excited about her research and talked too fast when she made discoveries. They were still themselves, but now they were also something more. The difference was in the small things. Taiho would start fixing problems before anyone knew the problems existed. Mi-young would answer questions before people finished asking them. Bomsu would arrive at destinations just when his cargo was needed most, even when he had not known it was needed at all. On Space Station Harmony, which served as a trading post for 12 different species, the changes were impossible to ignore. Taiho worked there as the chief engineer, and aliens had always liked him. He was patient and kind, always willing to explain how human technology worked. But now his explanations were different. The fusion reactor was running at 60% efficiency, he told Kyomin during her inspection visit. Now it runs at 98%. How did you improve it so much? She asked, looking at displays that showed perfect energy output. Taiho smiled and patted the reactor's control panel like it was a friendly animal. I asked it what it wanted to do, and then I helped it do that. You asked the machine? Everything wants to work well, he said simply. Machines, systems, living things. They just need someone to listen and understand what they need. The life support systems on the station had never worked so smoothly. The air was cleaner, the water was purer, and the artificial gravity felt more natural than it ever had before. When alien engineers tried to study Taiho's improvements, they found changes so small and complex that they could not understand how they worked. But they did work. Better than anyone had thought possible. Merchant Sojin continued her trade routes between the star systems, but now her business had changed in ways that amazed everyone. She would arrive at a planet carrying exactly the goods they needed, sometimes before they knew they needed them. I brought medical scanners for your hospitals, she told the governor of a Zephyrite colony world. We did not order medical scanners, the governor replied, his crystal body flashing confusion. You will need them in 3 days, Sojin said, calmly. When the mining accident happens in the southern district. What mining accident? There are no problems with our mines. Sojin just smiled. There will be. A small earthquake will damage support beams in Tunnel 7. 12 miners will be hurt, but not badly if you have the right equipment to find them quickly. The governor wanted to argue, but something in Sojin's eyes made him accept the scanners. 3 days later, the earthquake happened exactly as she had said. The miners were found and saved because the right equipment was ready. This kind of thing was happening everywhere humans worked. They seemed to know what would happen before it happened. Not magic, but something like it. They could see patterns that others could not see, connections that others could not understand. Dr. Mi-young published research papers faster than she ever had before. Her studies of alien biology revealed things that even the aliens did not know about themselves. She wrote about Velkrani healing processes that could cure diseases the Velkrani thought were impossible to cure. She described Altarian memory functions that could help Altarians learn new skills in days instead of years. How do you know so much about us? Asked Dr. Hayrim during one of their meetings. We have been studying you for a long time, Mi-young replied. Not just studying, but caring about you. When you care about someone deeply enough, you begin to understand them in ways that science alone cannot teach. The most amazing changes were happening to human technology. Ships that had been flying for years suddenly became faster and more efficient. Weapons that had been designed for war began working as tools for building and creating instead. Computers that had been good at calculating numbers became good at predicting what people needed. The Velkrani military tried to take control of some human ships, thinking they could use the improved technology for themselves. But the ships would not respond to alien commands anymore. The computers would turn on, the engines would start, but nothing would work the way it was supposed to. The ship does not know you, Captain Nari explained when the Velkrani complained to the Galactic Council. It was built by human hands, programmed by human minds, and flown by human hearts. It trusts humans, but it does not trust those who would use it to harm others. Machines do not think, protested the Velkrani commander. They do not choose who to trust. These machines do, Nari said simply, because they were built with love, not just engineering. The strangest part was how helpful the humans had become. They seemed to anticipate what other species needed, before those species knew they needed it. Human doctors would send medical supplies to planets just before disease outbreaks occurred. Human farmers would plant crops that would be perfectly suited for weather patterns that had not happened yet. Ambassador. DeYoung continued her work at the Galactic Council, but now she spoke with knowledge that seemed to come from everywhere at once. When trade disputes arose, she would suggest solutions that satisfied everyone involved. When conflicts threatened to become wars, she would offer compromises that no one had thought of before. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" asked Kyo-min after DeYoung had helped solve a particularly difficult problem between two alien species. "We listen," DeYoung replied. "Not just to words, but to what people really need. Not just to what they want, but to what would make them happy. When you can hear all of that at once, the right answers become obvious." But the most important change was happening in space itself. Human ships were moving in new patterns, creating formations that looked more like art than military strategy. They were positioning themselves around important star systems, not to control or threaten, but to protect and watch. And they were all looking in the same direction. Commander Jin Woo was leading a fleet of human vessels toward the outer edge of the galaxy. When other species asked why, he would only say that they were preparing the defenses. "Defenses against what?" demanded the Velkrani military leader. Jin Woo looked at him with those deep, knowing eyes that all humans had now. "Against the hunger that devours galaxies," he said. "It has noticed us now. It is coming." Long-range sensors that humans had built and shared with other species began picking up strange signals from the empty space between galaxies. Signals that sounded almost like music, but music that made people feel cold and afraid when they heard it. The humans heard it differently. To them, it sounded like the hunting song of something vast and terrible, something that had been moving through the universe for millions of years, eating everything in its path. "How long do we have?" asked Hyur. "Dr. Hayrim." "Not long," replied every human she asked. "But long enough if we work together." The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Representatives from 200 different species filled the great chamber, all demanding answers about what the humans had become and what the strange signals from deep space meant. Ambassador DeYoung stood at the center of the room, but she was not alone. Every human in the galaxy was with her, speaking through her, sharing her voice. When she opened her mouth, the words came from billions of human throats across countless worlds. "You have asked us many times why we are different from other species," the collective human voice said, creating harmonies that made the translation machine spark and hum. "You wondered why we spread so quickly through the galaxy, why we adapted so easily to new worlds, why we dreamed of reaching the stars when most species were content to stay on their home planets." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the Velkrani, who were always quick to interrupt, listened without speaking. "We told you it was human nature," DeYoung continued, her voice carrying the weight of an entire species. "That was not entirely true." Commander Byung-ho, speaking from his ship at the edge of the galaxy, took up the explanation. His words reached the council chamber instantly, as if distance meant nothing to the human network. "We are not originally from Earth," he said. "We are the children of something much older, something that once lived between the stars and watched over galaxies like a gardener tends to flowers." The alien representatives began to murmur and shift in their seats. This was not what they had expected to hear. Captain Bamsu, still on his cargo runs but somehow also present in the chamber, continued the story. "Long ago, our ancestor mind learned that something was hunting galaxies. A darkness that moved from galaxy to galaxy, consuming everything, stars, planets, entire civilizations. It had already destroyed countless galaxies, and it was coming for ours." Dr. Mi-young's voice joined the explanation from her research station. "Our ancestor could have fought the darkness as one being, but it would not have been enough. So it did something that had never been done before. It broke itself apart into billions of pieces and scattered them across the galaxy. Each piece became a human soul," added engineer Taeho from Space Station Harmony. "We grew up thinking we were just another species that had learned to use tools and build ships, but we were really fragments of something ancient and powerful, waiting for the day when we would be needed again." Ambassador Du Young raised her hand, and every human in the galaxy raised their hand with her. That day has come. The darkness our ancestor hid from has found our galaxy. It is approaching from the empty space between star systems, and it is hungry. The alien delegates erupted into chaos. Some shouted questions, others demanded proof, many simply refused to believe what they were hearing. But their arguments died away when the humans began to show them what was coming. Every screen in the chamber lit up with images from the deep space sensors. At first, the aliens saw only empty darkness between the galaxies. But as the humans adjusted the sensors, shapes began to appear in that darkness. They were not ships in any sense that made sense. They were living things, but bigger than planets. They moved through space like enormous fish swimming through an ocean, leaving trails of consumed matter behind them. Where they passed, stars went out, planets cracked apart, and entire solar systems simply disappeared. "They have eaten 3 galaxies already," said Captain Nari, her voice heavy with sadness. "Trillions of beings, countless civilizations, all consumed to feed the endless hunger of these creatures." The images zoomed in on one of the dark entities. It was beautiful in a horrible way, like a massive jellyfish made of living shadow and hungry light. Tendrils reached out from its body, each one large enough to wrap around a moon, and everything they touched was pulled into the creature's glowing core. "How long until they reach us?" asked Kyomin, her voice barely a whisper. "They are already here," replied every human at once. "The leading scouts entered our galaxy 6 months ago. They have been moving slowly, testing our defenses, learning about us. The main swarm will arrive in 37 days. The chamber erupted again, but this time with fear instead of anger. Delegates called for evacuation ships, for weapons, for someone to tell them how to fight creatures that could eat entire solar systems. "You cannot fight them with weapons," Du Young said, her voice cutting through the panic. "They are not evil, they are just hungry. They consume matter and energy, because that is their nature, the same way a fire consumes wood. You cannot negotiate with them or reason with them or frighten them away." "Then how can they be stopped?" demanded the Velkrani military leader. "They cannot be stopped," answered Admiral Jinwu. "But they can be turned away if the galaxy has guardians who know how to speak to them in ways they understand." The humans began to explain their plan, but it was difficult for other species to understand. The dark creatures existed partly in normal space and partly in dimensions that had no names. They communicated through forces that bent reality around them. Fighting them required not weapons, but a kind of cosmic diplomacy that only beings connected across vast distances could perform. "We have been preparing," said Sojin from her trading ship. "Every improvement we have made, every system we have upgraded, every ship we have positioned, all of it has been to create a network that can speak to the darkness in its own language. We have learned to move as one mind across the galaxy," added Dr. Hayrim from her research station. "Now we can project that unified consciousness into the spaces between dimensions, where the dark creatures live." "But we cannot do it alone," admitted Commander Byung-ho. "We need the help of every species in the galaxy. We need your ships, your technology, your willpower. Most importantly, we need your trust." The alien delegates looked at each other uncertainly. The idea of trusting humanity had never been easy, even before the humans had become something beyond normal understanding. "Why should we trust you?" asked a Zephyrite representative, his crystal body flickering with doubt. "How do we know you will not use this power to control us after the danger has passed?" Ambassador Du Young smiled, and it was the same warm, friendly smile she had always had, even though it now carried the weight of billions of minds behind it. "Because we love you," she said simply. "We have lived among you, worked with you, learned from you, built families with some of you. We have come to love this galaxy and everyone in it. That love is what woke us up. That love is what gives us the power to protect what we care about." She gestured to the screens showing the approaching darkness. "We could have awakened at any time in the past 1,000,000 years. But we only awakened now when you were threatened, because protecting the people we love is what makes us who we truly are." The chamber fell silent again as the delegates considered this. Finally, Kyo-min stood up. "What do you need us to do?" she asked. The humans smiled with joy that could be felt across the galaxy. "Help us build a network of light to push back the darkness," they said together. "Help us show these creatures that our galaxy is not empty food waiting to be consumed, but a living community that knows how to defend itself." "And then?" asked the Velkrani leader. "Then we go back to being your neighbors, your friends, and your partners," Du Young replied. "But also your guardians, for as long as you need us to be." 23 days remained until the dark swarm would reach the populated areas of the galaxy. Across hundreds of star systems, an amazing transformation was taking place. Species that had argued for centuries were working together like old friends. The humans had not forced this cooperation. They had simply shown everyone what was possible when people worked toward the same goal. Captain Bomsu still told his terrible jokes, but now he told them while coordinating supply runs between 12 different species. His cargo hold carried Velkrani shield generators, Zephyrite power crystals, Altarian communication arrays, and dozens of other technologies that had never been combined before. Why did the Zephyrite crystal refuse to work with the Velkrani generator? He asked his mixed crew of aliens and humans. "We do not know, Captain," sighed his Altarian navigator, who had heard this setup before, because it needed time to reflect. Bomsu laughed at his own joke while perfectly coordinating the arrival of supply ships from 6 different star systems. The transformation was not just about working together. It was about understanding what each species did best. The Velkrani were master builders, so they constructed the massive relay stations that would anchor the galaxy-wide network. The Zephyrites could manipulate energy in ways no one else could, so they became the power source for the defensive grid. The Altarians were natural diplomats, so they helped different species understand their roles. And the humans had become the nervous system that connected everything together. Engineer Tejo was working on Space Station Harmony, but his consciousness was also guiding construction on 100 other stations across the galaxy. His hands were installing power relays while his mind was coordinating with Velkrani engineers on the other side of the galaxy, and his awareness was monitoring energy flows on stations he had never physically visited. "This should not be possible," muttered Dr. Hayrim as she watched him work. "You cannot be in all these places at once." "I am not in all these places," Tejo replied, while simultaneously adjusting systems on distant worlds. "But I am connected to all these places, like how your tentacles are not separate creatures even though they can work independently." She watched him install a component that would have taken her team days to figure out, completing it in minutes with perfect precision. "Are you still you?" she asked quietly. "Or are you just part of something bigger now?" Tejo stopped working and looked at her with eyes that were definitely still his own, even though they held depths they had not had before. "I am still me," he said. "I still love fixing things. I still hum old songs. I still get excited when I solve difficult problems, but now I am also part of something wonderful. Like being a single voice in a choir, I am still my own voice, but I am also part of music that is bigger and more beautiful than any voice could make alone." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening as other species learned to understand what humanity had become. The humans had not lost their individuality. They had found a way to be both individuals and part of something greater. Dr. Mi Young continued her research, but now she was studying the dark entities that were approaching. What she discovered was both terrible and sad. The creatures were not evil. They were just alone. They had been traveling through the universe for so long that they had forgotten how to do anything except consume. They ate galaxies because they did not know how to have relationships with them. They are like children who never learn to share. She explained to the research team studying her data. They take everything because no one ever taught them how to receive gifts or give gifts back. "Can they be taught?" asked a consortium scientist. "Maybe," Mi Young replied. "But first we have to get their attention without being eaten." The plan the humans had developed was unlike anything that had ever been attempted. They would use the galaxy-wide network to create a unified field of consciousness, not just human consciousness, but the combined awareness of every thinking being in the galaxy. This field would extend into the spaces between dimensions where the dark entities lived and speak to them in ways that transcended normal communication. Ambassador Du Young was coordinating the final preparations from the Galactic Council chambers, but her awareness stretched across the entire galaxy. She could feel every ship moving into position, every power generator coming online, every mind preparing to join the network. "Are all species ready?" she asked, her voice reaching every corner of the galaxy at once. "The Velkrani construction. Teams report all relay stations are operational," came the reply from 100 worlds. "Zephyrite power crystals are synchronized and ready," sang the crystal beings in harmonies that made stars flicker. "Altarian Diplomatic Corps has established communication protocols with all participating species," reported voices from the Corps. Worlds. Thousands of other species added their confirmations. The galaxy had become a single coordinated organism, ready to defend itself. The dark swarm arrived exactly when the humans had predicted. The leading edge of the cosmic predators swept into the outer systems of the galaxy like a tide of hungry shadows. They moved with the confidence of creatures that had never encountered resistance, had never found prey that could fight back. But this galaxy was different. As the dark entities reached the first line of defensive stations, something happened that had never happened in their millions of years of existence. The galaxy spoke to them. It was not words or sounds, but pure communication. The combined thoughts and feelings of trillions of conscious beings all focused on one message. "You are welcome here, but not as destroyers. Stay and learn to be part of something bigger than hunger." The dark creatures stopped moving. For the first time in their existence, they encountered minds that were not afraid of them, that did not run or hide or try to fight with weapons. Instead, they found consciousness that reached out to them with curiosity and compassion. Captain Nari, leading a fleet of ships at the galaxy's edge, felt the moment when contact was made. The dark entities were so alien that talking to them was like trying to have a conversation with a storm. But gradually, patterns began to emerge in their chaotic thoughts. They were old. So old that they remembered when the universe was young and filled with different kinds of life. They had been traveling for so long that they had forgotten their own origins, forgotten everything except the need to consume energy to continue existing. "They are lonely," Nari reported, her voice filled with wonder and sadness. "They have been alone in the dark between galaxies for so long that they forgot how to be anything except hungry." The galaxy's response was immediate and unanimous. Instead of rejecting the dark entities, the combined consciousness of billions of beings reached out to welcome them, not as conquerors or destroyers, but as fellow travelers who had forgotten how to live instead of just survive. The process took 3 days. Slowly, carefully, the galaxy taught the ancient entities how to receive energy as a gift instead of taking it by force. Human engineers worked with Zephyrite energy specialists and Velkrani builders to create feeding stations where the dark creatures could absorb the energy they needed without destroying anything. In return, the entities began to share their own ancient knowledge, secrets of traveling between dimensions, ways of existing that no other species had ever imagined, stories of galaxies that had died and been reborn in cycles too vast for normal minds to comprehend. When it was over, the galaxy was not the same as it had been before. The dark entities had become its guardians, protecting it from other cosmic threats while learning how to be part of a community instead of eternal predators. The various species had learned to work together in ways they had never thought possible, and the humans had settled back into their lives as individuals who were also part of something greater. Captain Bomsu went back to making his terrible jokes while delivering cargo to grateful worlds. Engineer Tejo hummed his old songs while maintaining stations that now hosted beings from dimensions beyond counting. Dr. Mi Young continued her research, but now she studied forms of life that existed in spaces between spaces. Ambassador Du Young returned to her diplomatic work, but now she spoke with the wisdom of a species that had learned how to love so deeply that it would transform itself to protect what it cared about. "Are you happy?" asked Kyomin during one of their regular meetings. Du Young smiled, and her smile was both completely human and something more. "We are ourselves, and we are together, and we are safe," she said. "And we are surrounded by friends who trust us to keep them safe too. What could make us happier than that?" Outside the windows of the council chambers, ships from a dozen species flew alongside entities of living shadow that had learned to be gentle. The galaxy hummed with the quiet activity of civilizations that had found peace not through conquest, but through understanding. And in the deep places between stars, ancient guardians watched and waited, ready to protect the community they had learned to love.